And so in 1953, at the age of 16, I entered Oberlin. But I remember how moved I was when I first read about a town and a college called Oberlin. Places where his story, and her story, traditions and accomplishments spoke of the dignity and the work of all people. I remember the deep sense of pride I felt when I first learned that my college was the first college to admit women. That my college was the first college to admit African American students. And when I read that this was a place on the Underground Railroad, I said, yes, that's my place. The intertwining of the values of abolitionists and early feminists, and the belief that education is the most consistent way for an individual and a people to advance, resonated with me, a 16-year-old colored girl who had lived all of her life in the racially segregated and male-dominated South. Now, this is not the time and the place for me to testify. And anyway, I'm not sure Brother Red wants that tradition to get started. So this is the time and the place for me to testify about the role of Oberlin College and the town of Oberlin in shaping me into the anthropologist, the college professor, the college president, the philanthropist, the activist, and the African American woman that I am today. But I do want to just stop a moment to acknowledge that though I did not worship in First Church, I remember as a young Oberlin College student finding my way to a Methodist church, a black Methodist church. I have to lift up the name of Professor George E. Simpson, who in an Oberlin classroom introduced me to a field that whose name I could hardly pronounce. And I must express my gratitude not only to Professor Simpson, but also to his colleague, Milton J. Meeker, who with that red book in its first edition called Racial and Cultural Minorities, laid the foundation for my ongoing intellectual and activist work on issues of diversity and inclusion. Like Oberlin's founders, my professors and my mentors at the college and in the Oberlin community were not afraid to hold high ideals and to pursue lofty goals. John Shepard and Philo Stewart were Christian perfectionists. They believed that through education, hard work, and unyielding faith, people could transcend their personal flaws. You know, people got a whole lot. That selfishness, egotism, and pride could be put aside. And that women and men could perfect their earthly lives. Their Oberlin Colony and the Collegiate Institute, which became today's college and town. These were created as a place to be apart from the world. Places where idealism would be translated reality through the education of teachers and preachers who would convey to others Oberlin's way of attaining perfection. In short, the goal of Oberlin's founders was nothing less than saving the world, starting with America's Western frontier. Whenever I think about those early folk, I speed right to today, and I hear the words of Marion Wright Edelman, who says, if you don't like the way the world is, go on and change it. You just have to do it one step at a time. Now, the goal of Oberlin's founders, to save the world, I will tell you, my sisters and my brothers, that was a bold vision. In the next few years, Oberlin's vision became even bolder. Charles Grandison Bennett, the most famous evangelist in America at that time, came to Oberlin. He served first as a professor and then as president at Oberlin College and a pastor of this very church. I hope you two brothers understand. But it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. I don't know the particular passage, but I remember at Spelman complaining about trying to walk in somebody's footsteps, the former president, and a rabbi said to me, quoting some passage of the Torah, you can't do it. You can only walk in your own. Finney preached from this book. And indeed, his powerful voice that he is said to have had, his piercing eyes commanded that folk ought to try to do right. Under Finney's influence, Oberlin College trustees made some decisions that were nothing short of pure, deep, radical. Oberlin seems to have gotten on this track and never got off. They decided that every student would do 4 hours of manual labor each day. That women would be educated alongside of men. That the college would commit itself to educating black students. And that the faculty would control the college's internal academic affairs. Brother Dean, did you hear that? Those decisions were not made lightly or easily. The resolution to encourage and sustain the education of people of color, for example, was passed after a tie vote by the Board of Trustees was broken by John Keith, the board chairman. In this election year, when so much is at stake, if you hear anybody say, one vote doesn't matter, tell them the story of John Keith. The manual labor requirement, Oberlin College has adhered to those